The soup had a skin on it, and the spoon was stuck like a flagpole in grayish chicken fat. Grandma Charlotte held the bowl in both hands under her chin, half sitting up in bed, eyes on the door like I was the person she'd been waiting for all evening. My name is Natasha Young. I'm 30, and I'm the assistant manager on the late shift at Oak Street Market on the south side of town. I keep my grandma's house key on a blue lanyard because I'm the one who shows up when my younger brother says he's running late. He's Brian Young, 27, and he was supposed to be here tonight. I thought you were Brian, Grandma said, voice brightening and then settling. He texted he was running late. He texted me too, I said, setting my tote on the chair by her dresser. At 7:12. Then nothing. I took the bowl from her. The broth had congealed around noodle ends, cool against my fingers through the ceramic. The house was quiet in a way that makes you listen for things, leaking faucets, creaky vents, anything human. Nothing. Just the hum of the old fridge down the hall and the tick-tick of the living room clock. The quiet in this place has teeth when you're waiting on someone who isn't coming. Grandma is 79 and stubborn in the way that keeps people alive. Lives alone, refuses to move in with me, insists she can manage her little yellow house if we check on evenings and meds. We made a plan this winter. Alternating weekends, B for Brian, and N for me on the calendar stuck to her fridge with a tomato-shaped magnet. He picked Saturday nights. I took Sundays. Simple, realistic, adult. I took a picture of the bowl on her quilt with my phone before I headed to the kitchen. I didn't know why in that moment, just that I wanted proof of the quiet. The microwave light splashed yellow on the laminate as I stirred the soup, reheated it, and carried it back. Grandma's hair was mussed from a nap, gray and fine. The TV remote sat on her nightstand, untouched. She gave me that apologetic smile she uses when she thinks she's being a burden. He's a good boy, just busy, she said. I bit my tongue. Eat while it's hot, then we'll do your meds. She took a cautious sip. I opened her pill organizer on the dresser, Sunday through Saturday rows. The evening one for Saturday still full. We don't skip those. I set the blister pack next to her water and waited until she swallowed, counting in my head, watching her throat. The rituals make me feel better, like there's a right way to hold all this together. After she ate half the bowl, she swung her legs off the bed. Bathroom, she said. I've got you. She bristled. I'm fine. She wasn't wobbly until she stood. It was quick, a stumble, the heel of her slipper catching the rug edge, that sudden emptying of color from her face as her balance went. I caught her elbow and hip, felt her weight lean into me. My stomach did that drop it does on roller coasters, only we were in a dim hallway with family photos, and she was wearing those slippers with the worn soles I keep telling her to toss. Got you, I said again, softer. We shuffled to the bathroom. I waited outside the cracked door like always, listening for the small sounds that mean everything is fine. When she was done, I walked her back, lifted her legs onto the bed, and pulled the comforter over her knees. I don't like that one, she said, pointing at the spoon. It's too heavy. I'll bring the lighter one next time. Just tell him, she said, like we were still talking about spoons. I checked my phone. Still nothing from Brian. The last thing from him was hours ago, running late. No apology, no ETA. He knows Grandma eats by 7 and does meds at 8 because I wrote it out in text and on paper more than once. I went to the kitchen and stared at the fridge calendar. Big block letters, B-N-B-N, alternating like that truce we never signed in blood but tried to honor anyway. Tonight was a fat B in black Sharpie. I took another photo, this time of the square with the B and today's date. I added it to a folder I just made on my phone called Grandma. Out the kitchen window, The neighbor's porch light flicked on. Freya Wilkins lives next door. She's 52, has a teacher's patience, and agreed last month to sit with Grandma if we needed help. $60 a night if I asked her to stay. I hadn't called her tonight because Brian had claimed the shift. He always claims the shift until it's time to show up. I took the spoon and bowl back to the sink and ran hot water until the fat melted and swirled down in clouds. My phone buzzed, and my heart jumped like a dog trained to fetch. It wasn't Brian. It was a work group chat ping about covering a Sunday morning that I couldn't take. I set Grandma's evening pills where she couldn't miss them, boxed the rest of the soup, and texted Brian anyway. "Are you okay?" Grandma waited. She almost fell. He read it. 2 gray check marks turned blue, then nothing. When I went back to her room, she was drowsing. I smoothed the blanket, turned off the lamp, and sat in the chair by her bed for a while, listening to the clock, breathing with her. I slid my phone into my pocket with the photo of the bowl and the calendar, and I had the first clear thought I'd had all day. If he's busy, I'll be exact. Just this once, I told myself the next morning. Then the next Saturday came. At 6:41 p.m., Brian texted, "Running late. Same words, different night." I had a closing shift at Oak Street Market and couldn't be in 2 places. I called Freya. "Can you sit with Grandma tonight?" I asked. "Dinner, meds at 8. I'll be over after close." Freya didn't sigh or make it dramatic. "I can be there in 10. 60 a night, like we said." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. She texted me a photo of Grandma and the cat watching Wheel of Fortune at 7:05, the timestamp like a little bandage on the evening. I saved it to the Grandma folder. Brian sent nothing else that night. I finished closing, did the deposit, locked the side door, and drove to the yellow house with that blue lanyard biting my neck. Freya handed me a paper note with what Grandma ate and the time she took her pills. I handed her cash. 60 gone. The week after that, same Saturday story. Running late at 6:12. Then silence. I tried to swap shifts and couldn't. My cook called out sick. I called Freya again. She came. 60. By the 4th Saturday, Freya had a family birthday. I told my supervisor I needed the night. He raised an eyebrow, glanced at the schedule, and slid me a PTO form. "That's 2 days this month, Tash," he said. "You good?" "Yeah," I lied. "Family stuff?" Haley caught me in the break room filling out that form. She wears her hair in a bun with pins stuck through it like arrows. Always sees more than I want her to. "You look wrecked," she said around a mouthful of chips. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, pushing the form into my bag. I wasn't. I was counting in my head, 60, 120, 180, plus gas across town, plus whatever I wasn't making when I burned PTO. Sundays were mine, like we'd agreed. I still came over with soup and groceries on those nights, set out pills, sat through the crossword show she likes. But Saturdays, his nights, kept falling to me to arrange, to cover, to pay for. It was 6 Saturdays before I let myself say out loud that it wasn't just this once. The pattern was ugly and simple. At 6-something, a running late. By 9, a story about traffic or a friend needing him. Around midnight, if anything, "You okay?" that read more like checking I'd handled it. I stopped replying with no worries. I started saving everything. I had 8 nights where Freya sat with Grandma because I couldn't get off in time. 8 little dings on my banking app. 8 texts from Freya saying, "Here now," and she took them at 8:12. And 1 photo of Grandma's cat asleep on Freya's lap. 8 60s, $480. Nestled between those were Brian's posts, a boomerang of a beer clinking back and forth, tagged at a sports bar 20 minutes from Grandma's. A selfie with a neon sign as bright as a bruise behind him. The caption, "Finally a Saturday with no obligations," posted at 11:46 p.m. I screenshot them all, threw them in the grandma folder next to a picture of the calendar squares with B on Saturdays, N on Sundays. The month looked fair when you saw the alternating letters, like a pattern you could trust. It wasn't. The 7th week, I tried a different tack. I texted him early. Reminder, Saturday is yours. Dinner by 7, meds at 8. Please confirm. He reacted with a thumbs up. At 7:19, running late, Freya was out of town that night. I took the PTO. That made 2 days gone in a month, the maximum before my supervisor started asking harder questions. He didn't say anything when I handed him the form, just watched me like he was adding up numbers too. After shift that night, I opened my laptop at my kitchen table and pulled up the grandma folder. I listed dates, put little hash marks next to every time I'd paid Freya, stuck the screenshots into a doc and labeled them with timestamps. I scrolled through my bank app and highlighted the 8 payments. It felt clinical, like I was auditing my own life. I opened Venmo and started a request to Brian. Description, grandma coverage. Freya X8, hour $60. Your Saturdays 3.4, 3.11, 3.18, 3.25, 4.1, 4.8, 4.15, 4.22. Total, $408. I attached a screenshot of the list. Dates blurred for privacy except the month and day. The totals circled. I kept the tone light in the note because I know how he spins things when it feels like an attack. Thanks for covering your share, I wrote. Makes it easier for me to keep Sundays solid. I sat there with my finger hovering over pay for longer than I want to admit. This is the part where, growing up, we smoothed it over for him. Mom left, and we learned how to make ourselves small around the crack of every door closing. Grandma taught us to be kind. Being clear felt like being mean. I hit send. A minute later, the little requested badge popped up next to his name. I put my phone face down and went to wash dishes. The sink backed up a little, and the water ran warm, and I washed until the plates squeaked under my fingers, and the only thing left to do was dry my hands and flip my phone over. No reply. The green dot next to his name blinked on and off. Under the request, a line appeared. Viewed. I took a screenshot of that too. Then I set an alarm for Saturday afternoon, the kind that vibrates your whole pocket, and labeled it, Don't Cover for Free. Brian's reply to the Venmo request came 20 minutes later. A laughing emoji, then a paragraph that started with, Family doesn't charge family, and ended with, You're making it transactional. I sat at my kitchen table and typed slow. I'm not charging for love. I'm asking you to cover costs on your Saturdays when you didn't show. Freya isn't free. My PTO isn't fake. He called instead of texting, like he could charm his way through a phone speaker. Nat, come on. You know what we've been through. Mom left. I'm dealing with stress you don't even understand. We both lived that, I said, keeping my voice even. And we made a plan. Saturday is you. Sunday is me. You're really going to nickel and dime me over a couple nights? His voice had that lazy smile painted on it. This is messed up. It's 8 nights. It's $480. It's groceries, I said. If scheduling is the problem, I can make it easier. I hung up before the conversation slid into the old swamp. I opened Google Calendar and built a new one called Grandma Care. Saturdays, 6:30, 19 p.m., I labeled Brian, dinner and meds. Sundays, Natasha, dinner and meds. I added notes, dinner by 7, meds at 8. I turned on reminders, 1 hour before, 30 minutes before, 10 minutes before, and sent him the invite. The invite stayed pending, he texted, not accepting your micromanagement calendar. LOL. By Saturday afternoon, my alarm went off. Don't cover for free. I texted him anyway, because Grandma is a person, not a project. Reminder, you tonight. Dinner by 7, Meds at 8. Please confirm. He reacted with a thumbs up. At 7 near 12, nothing. At 7:31, I called Grandma. She picked up on the second ring, TV loud in the background. Hey, sweetheart, she said. Brian texted he's running late. Have you eaten? I had toast, she said like it was a real meal. Saving the soup. Meds at 8, I said. Put the pill box on your nightstand so you see it. I know, she said. He's a good boy, just busy. At 8:05, I texted Brian. Are you here? She needs meds. No reply. At 8:37, you need to give her the evening pills with water. He finally texted at 9:02. LOL chill. On my way. I stared at that for a long minute. My car keys were right there. So was the blue lanyard. I could have gotten in, driven across town, done the thing I always do. Fix it, smooth it, pay later in exhaustion. I didn't. I called Grandma again. Don't worry, she said, already getting drowsy. I'll do them when he's here. Okay, I said, hating how the word felt. Call me if you need me. At 10:11, still nothing from Brian. I opened Instagram out of habit more than hope, and saw it, the boomerang of neon shots lined up on a bar, clinking back and forth, one of his friend's wrists in the frame with a glow stick. Posted at 11:38 p.m., his caption, Out, out. The location tag was a nightclub across town. Comments were already stacking up with fire emojis and let's go. I took screenshots, the timestamp, the caption, the location tag, the list of likes with his little profile picture smiling at the camera like a golden retriever. I threw them in the grandma folder next to the Venmo request and the calendar photo. I texted him one more time. Did you give her meds? He read it and typed for a second. A bubble popped up and then disappeared. Then, we're fine. Stop being dramatic. I didn't sleep well. I woke up at 7, made coffee I didn't drink, and drove to the Yellow House. The living room smelled like dust and last night's TV. Grandma was asleep in her chair with the throw blanket half off. The pill box sat by the remote. Saturday PM was still full. My stomach dropped in a way that felt physical, like a floor giving out. I touched her shoulder gently. Grandma, I said, wake up a minute. She blinked at me, surprised, and then sheepish. I was waiting, she said. I must have dozed. I held the pill box so she could see. You missed these last night. Oh. She looked small suddenly. It's morning. Should I take them now? I grabbed the sheet with her med schedule from the drawer. Dr. Patel's office number was at the top. I called. The after-hours line forwarded to a nurse who sounded like she'd had coffee. I'm with my grandmother, I said. She missed her evening meds last night, blood pressure and a thyroid pill. It's 8:12 a.m. now. What should we do? The nurse asked her name, the meds, the dosages. She was calm. Give the blood pressure pill now with food, she said. Skip the thyroid and resume the regular schedule tonight. Watch for dizziness today and call if her pressure's high or if anything seems off. Thank you, I said, writing it down even though I'd remember every word. I made toast and eggs and sat with Grandma until she ate and swallowed the pill, counted the sips of water with her the way I do at night. I took a photo of the pill box with Saturday PM still closed and Sunday AM open, the little proof square my brain needed, and labeled it with the date. Brian texted at 9:06. Chill, everything is fine. You didn't have to swoop in. I sent him the photo of the pill box and didn't add any words. A minute later, the scene appeared and then nothing. I opened my laptop back home and moved the Instagram screenshots into a new subfolder, Evidence. It felt gross, like I was building a case against my own brother, but the alternative was this feeling in my chest forever. I sent him one more thing, another invite to the Grandma Care calendar. It sat there, pending, the digital equivalent of him shrugging with a grin. I set my own Sunday reminder. Then I put the key lanyard on the hook and let the quiet in my apartment be just quiet, not teeth. I didn't make any big announcement to myself. I just opened my laptop on Monday night and started a spreadsheet. Date in the first column, Brian Saturday in the next. Freya, amount, notes. I pulled up the grandma folder and worked through it like I was closing out a drawer at the market. No drama, just numbers. 3 to 4. Freya sat $60. Dinner on plus meds. Photo 7:05 p.m. 3:11, $60. 3:18, $60. 3:25, $60. 4:1, $60. 4:8, $60. 4:15, $60. 4:22, $60. 8 lines, $480 total. The kind of number that makes my chest feel tight because it's both not a fortune and the exact amount that keeps landing between me and ease. I texted Freya, "Can I swing by? Need receipts for the nights you sat with Grandma, if you have them." She replied in under a minute. "Come over, I'll write them out." Her porch light was on. She met me at the door with a plate covered in foil and a pen tucked behind her ear. "Banana bread," she said, pressing the plate into my hands. "You looked tired yesterday." I laughed because she wasn't wrong. "You're a saint." "I'm an early sleeper. You keep my evenings interesting," she said, and waved me toward her kitchen table. She pulled a pad of receipt paper from a drawer, the kind with carbon copies, and wrote each date carefully. Time in and time out. Companion care for Charlotte, $60. Signed her name. She tore off the top copies and put them in a neat stack. "I can come to court if you want," she said, casual like she was offering a ride to the store. "I hope it doesn't come to that," I said, "but thank you." Back home, I slid the receipts into plastic sleeves and added them to a binder I'd started. I made divider tabs out of sticky notes, receipts, texts, posts, calendar, PTO. The organizing part felt like reclaiming breath. I printed the screenshots, the running late text with timestamps, the blue check marks where he'd read and didn't answer, the Instagram shots with the date and the neon signs. I added a photo of the fridge calendar with our alternating letters and one of Grandma's pill box with Saturday PM still full. I printed my bank transactions showing 8 payments to Freya. The printer whirred and smelled like warmed dust. At work the next morning, I caught Haley between the dairy case and the bakery. "Do you think you could print my attendance log?" "Just mine," I said. "I need proof of the PTO days I used." She looked at me, at the way I was biting the inside of my cheek. "You doing a thing?" she asked. "I'm doing a thing," I said. "I'll get it after my break," she said. And good. She found me in the office later and slid a printout across the desk. 2 PTO days in March, 1 pending in April, she said in a low voice. "Is this the brother thing?" "Yeah," I said. "Good," she said again, like a stamp. On my lunch, I Googled small claims in our county. The limit was plenty high. The filing fee was $75. I clicked through to the e-filing portal and made an account, the kind with security questions that always make me pause. I filled out Plaintiff, Natasha Young. Defendant, Brian Young. My stomach did a small flip typing his name in that box. I typed out the claim in the little narrative field. We agreed to alternate Saturday-Sunday evening caregiver duties for our grandmother. On 8 Saturdays, Brian failed to appear. I hired our neighbor, Freya Wilkins, to sit with my grandmother at $60 per night to cover his missed turns. I am seeking reimbursement of $480 for those costs, plus filing fees. The portal asked if I wanted to attach exhibits now or bring them to the hearing. I uploaded the spreadsheet and 1 receipt as a sample, then made a note that additional documentation would be provided at hearing. I put in my email, my address, my phone number. The part where you list the defendant's address made my fingers feel like someone else's. Typing Grandma Street, the place where the porch light is always a little too dim and the screen door has a stubborn spring. When it asked for payment, I got up and looked in my closet. My work flat sat on the floor by the hamper, splitting along the toe seam. I'd put aside $70 from tips and overtime to replace them. I added $5 more from the coffee can in my cabinet and went back to the laptop. I entered my card, $75. Submit. There was a pause long enough to make me worry I'd mistyped something. Then the confirmation page loaded with the case number, like a new license plate you don't know by heart yet. An email pinged my phone. Your claim has been received. The court will review and contact you regarding service and hearing schedule. My hands shook, but not like fear, more like when you've been holding a bag too long and finally set it down. I printed the confirmation and slid it into the very front of the binder, the way you put a name tag on a suitcase. I printed a copy of the complaint and the case number to carry with me. In the evening, I went to Grandma's like I always do on my night. I checked her meds, heated soup, listened to her tell me about her neighbor's new bird feeder. I kept the binder in my tote bag by the chair, a weight against my leg. When Grandma dozed off, I pulled out my phone and snapped one more photo of the calendar on her fridge, this week and next. BNBN. It looked so simple written down. On my kitchen table later, I laid the binder and the printed complaint next to my keys. The blue lanyard glowed like a strip of sky in the lamplight. The case number in bold at the top of the page looked official and unreal the way hospital bracelets look. I didn't gloat. There was no victory lap. I just sat there, peeled back the foil on Freya's banana bread, cut a slice, and ate it standing up, the sweetness heavy and ordinary. Then I stacked the papers, squared the corners with my palm, and left the packet there like something that could finally take a hit for me. The court email came 2 days after I filed. A PDF with a case number, a hearing date 3 weeks out on a Tuesday morning, and a note in bold, defendant must be served at least 15 days before hearing. Service instructions were attached like a recipe card. Hire a process server or ask the sheriff. File proof of service. I called a process server listed on the county website. A woman picked up on the second ring, brisk and kind. I gave her Brian's name and Grandma's address, the same one I'd typed into the complaint because that's where he's easiest to find when he bothers to be found. Any pattern to when he's there? She asked. Saturdays are supposed to be his evenings, but he's flaky, I said. I'm always there Sundays around 6 to set up Grandma's pillbox and dinner. Sometimes he swings by to borrow tools from the shed. He's got a black Civic. He usually smells like cologne. She chuckled. We'll make 3 attempts at different times. If you know he'll be there, text me. I texted Brian that afternoon. Pharmacy says Grandma's refills are ready. Can you pick up and drop here Sunday at 6:30? He reacted with a thumbs up, which meant nothing and everything. I texted the process server. Try Sunday at 6:30. He said he'd drop meds. Sunday came, and I did my usual. Soup, greens, pills lined up in the little plastic tray. I put the new pill packs on the counter and waited. At 6:52, no Brian. At 7:10, I heard the crunch of tires over the gravel. Headlights washed across the living room wall. A knock at the screen door. I stood up, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and felt the blue lanyard tap my sternum like a metronome. It's open, I called, because it always is. Brian pushed the door and stepped onto the porch, plastic pharmacy bag in his hand. There was a man on the walkway I didn't recognize. Neat jacket, clipboard. He walked up the steps behind Brian. Brian Young, the man said. Brian turned, already smiling because attention is his favorite mirror. Yeah? The man held out a manila envelope. You've been served. He was efficient about it, like delivering the mail. He asked Brian to confirm his name again and noted the date and time on his clipboard. Brian did that laugh he does when he's scared and pretending it's funny. "You're kidding," he said, glancing past the man to me inside the doorway. "Nat, you really did this?" The server handed him a copy and nodded at me. "Proof of service will be filed," he said, and went back down the steps like a ghost who'd done his haunting. Brian waved the envelope. "You're dragging our family name through court over chump change?" I stepped onto the porch and took the pharmacy bag from his hand because the refills mattered more than his tone. "It's 8 nights. It's $480. That's not chump change to me." "$60 a night is groceries." He shook his head and smirked like we were in a sitcom. "No one's going to take you seriously, Natasha. Judge is going to laugh this out of the room." "I have receipts," I said. "I have your texts. I have your posts." "You're unbelievable," he said, but it sounded thin. He pulled the screen door, muttered something about errands, and got back in his Civic. The taillights disappeared down the block. The envelope stayed tucked under his arm. Inside, I set up Grandma's pill box for the week. Tiny rattles of medicine into each compartment. Careful fingers. She watched me from the table, eyes on my face like she was trying to read weather. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. "Everything's set," I said. "You're good for the week." I didn't add anything about court. She has enough to carry. The process server texted me a photo of the proof of service form, lines filled with neat block letters, and a thumbs up. I saved it to the Grandma folder and slid the original I'd get later into a mental slot labeled Done. Monday, Freya texted me a photo of a handwritten statement on lined paper. I, Freya Wilkins, provided evening companion care for Charlotte on the following dates: 3/4, 3/11, 3/18, 3/25, 4/1, 4/8, 4/15, 4/22. Duties included preparing dinner and ensuring evening medications were taken. Charge was $60 per night. Signed and dated. She added, "I can come if needed. Bless her." I printed it at work on my lunch and tucked it behind her receipts in the binder. Haley saw me in the office and lifted her eyebrows. I just nodded. She squeezed my shoulder once and went back to stocking end caps. The week before the hearing, an official-looking postcard arrived at my apartment with the date and courtroom number. I set it on the fridge with the tomato magnet that had migrated from Grandma's, a tiny circle of red holding up the paper like a cheerleader. The night before court, I took everything out of the binder and put it back in order. Complaint, proof of service, spreadsheet, Freya's receipts, her statement, my bank transactions, the calendar photo, Brian's running late texts, the Instagram screenshots, the attendance log Haley printed. I added sticky notes with one word each: dates, costs, missed meds. I laid out my work pants and the good blouse that doesn't wrinkle if you look at it wrong. I superglued the split in my flats and set them by the door. At 9:17 p.m., Brian texted, "Hope you like losing. Judge will see through your drama." I stared at it, then took a screenshot and dropped it into the folder with everything else. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that I hadn't already said with a spreadsheet and 8 receipts. I washed a sinkful of dishes because it's the one thing that always quiets my head. I dried my hands, checked that my alarm was set early enough to get Grandma settled with Freya for the morning. She'd offered to sit for free while I was at court, and I told her I'd insist on paying after, order or not. I put the blue lanyard with Grandma's key next to the binder on the table. The apartment was finally quiet in a way that felt like a blanket, not a warning. I turned off the light and let tomorrow come. The courthouse smelled like coffee and copy paper. I found the right floor by following a stream of people holding folders like life rafts. Freya had come over at 8 to sit with Grandma. "Go," she'd said, taking my tote of groceries without letting me argue money. "Text me when you're done." I locked up, touched the blue lanyard against my collarbone, and drove downtown with my binder buckled in like a passenger. Outside the small claims courtroom, a clerk with a stack of files checked names off a list. Young, she said, looking up. Natasha, I said. Plaintiff. She drew a line on her page. Defendant? Should be here, I said. Have a seat. When both parties are present, I'll mark you ready. I sat and opened the binder just enough to make sure everything was still there. Complaint, proof of service, spreadsheet, receipts, posts, texts, attendance log. I had made extra copies of the spreadsheet and receipts in case the judge wanted to keep anything. Haley had texted me a thumbs up and a "You've got this," and then, a minute later, "Don't let him talk circles." At 9:18, Brian slid in like a guy late to a movie and pretending it was planned. Cologne too strong, phone in hand, grin on. He wore a jacket I knew he couldn't afford without payment plans, and sunglasses pushed up on his head like a crown. Nat, he said, dropping into the chair next to me. We can just tell the judge this is a misunderstanding. It isn't, I said. He leaned back, legs out like he owned the hallway, and scrolled his phone. The clerk called, Young versus Young, and we both stood. She looked between us. We encourage parties to talk before the hearing to see if you can settle. If you reach an agreement, we can put it in writing. Brian shook his head, amused like she'd offered him decaf. Not a chance, he said. We'll let the judge sort this out. Okay, she said, not blinking. You're on second. Sit tight. I swallowed. My hands felt steady around the binder's edges. The key on my lanyard knocked softly against the plastic sleeve as I shifted. Behind the courtroom doors, a bailiff's voice boomed, All rise! For whoever was in there ahead of us. We waited through someone else's landlord dispute like you wait for an x-ray reading, ears picking up the rhythms without catching the words. When it was our turn, we went in and sat at the two tables marked plaintiff and defendant. Judge Henry took the bench, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, a tie that didn't try too hard. He looked like he'd read every file already and was just waiting for people to catch up. Good morning, he said. Young versus Young. Appearances. Plaintiff, Natasha, I said, standing. Defendant, Brian, Brian said, like he was introducing himself at a party. We swore in. The bailiff had us raise our right hands and promise to tell the truth. The oath made the room feel smaller. Judge Henry glanced at the file in front of him. Ms. Young, you filed a claim for $480 plus costs, alleging you incurred expenses for caregiver services on evenings that were the defendant's agreed responsibility. Mr. Young, you dispute? Brian opened his mouth, but the judge held up a hand. I'll hear from Ms. Young first, ma'am. I stepped closer and slid my binder across so he could reach it. We agreed to alternate evenings for our grandmother, Saturdays for Brian, Sundays for me. On 8 Saturdays, he didn't come. I hired our neighbor, Freya, to sit with her and handle dinner and meds at $60 per night. I'm seeking reimbursement for those 8 nights, plus the filing fee. Do you have documentation of those dates and amounts? Judge Henry asked. Yes, I said. Receipts from Freya, a spreadsheet listing the dates, my bank transactions showing the payments. I also have texts from Brian saying he was running late on his nights and screenshots of his social media posts from those same evenings. Brian laughed under his breath. The judge didn't look at him. I opened the binder to the receipts tab and slid the plastic sleeves out, then the spreadsheet. These are copies, I said. I can leave them with the court. Judge Henry took the stack, scanned the dates, and flipped to the next section. His expression didn't change, but he was reading, not pretending. He paused at the bank transactions, nodded once, and kept going. When he hit the tabs labeled text and posts, he slid one of the sheets out in full and adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Young," he said without looking up, "do you dispute that these were Saturdays you had agreed to cover?" Brian shrugged, palms up. "I mean, agreed. We didn't sign a contract." "It's family. This court can consider informal agreements and costs," Judge Henry said, still scanning. "You can respond after I've reviewed this." The clerk leaned over and took the copies I offered for the defendant's side. I set the attendance log and the calendar photo on top of the stack. The alternating B and N, neat like a lie, told loudly. The key on my lanyard swung when I stepped back. I kept my face neutral. Brian muttered, "This is ridiculous," barely loud enough to hear. The smells in the room, coffee, paper, someone's too sweet perfume, settled around us. Judge Henry flipped another page, paused, and then he did something that made Brian straighten in his chair. He stopped on a screenshot and held it a little closer, eyes narrowing to read the caption. He tapped the timestamp with his finger, once, like a metronome. Then he looked up, finally, at Brian, and the air in the room shifted the way it does before a storm. Judge Henry tapped the paper once with his finger and read it out loud, dry as if he were reading a grocery list. "Out with the boys, no responsibilities, posted at 11:58 p.m., Saturday the 18th. He glanced at me. "That was a Saturday you say was his responsibility." "Yes," I said. "He texted running late at 6:41 that night and didn't come." He flipped to the next page. "Sundays are for recovery, posted the morning after, liked by 23 people. He looked at Brian. "Mr. Young, explain how you can be running late to your grandmother's on a Saturday night while tagging a nightclub across town." Brian sat up, mouth already shaping charm. "Look, it's family. We all help. She's fine. She knows I love her. And Natasha is making it transactional. We didn't sign anything." The judge held up a hand. "This is small claims court. We deal with agreements and costs. The question is, was there an agreement? Were costs incurred when you didn't show, Ms.? Young has provided a calendar reflecting an alternating schedule, your text messages acknowledging your nights, and receipts for caregiver services paid when you failed to appear." He turned to me. "Miss Young, these receipts from Ms. Wilkins, how were they paid?" "In cash," I said, and pointed to the bank transactions. Withdrawals on the same dates. She also wrote a statement of duties and dates. He slid the statement out, scanned it, and nodded. "And this attendance log?" "Context," I said. "I used PTO to cover some of his nights when I couldn't hire Freya. I'm not asking for lost wages, just the $480 I paid out, plus the $75 filing fee." "Understood," he said. He stacked the papers, squared them, and looked at Brian again. "Do you dispute that you missed these dates?" Brian hedged. "I mean, sometimes plans change. Traffic. Work. Friends needed me. And she could have just..." "Did you inform her you wouldn't be there in enough time for her to arrange coverage?" the judge asked. Brian's smile slipped a fraction. "I said I was running late." Judge Henry looked back down at the screenshots, then at the calendar photo with the alternating B and N. He adjusted his glasses, and his voice went a shade firmer. "Ms. Young's documentation is thorough. The timeline is clear. On balance, I find that you, Mr. Young, agreed to assume Saturday evenings and failed to show on 8 dates, causing her to incur reasonable costs to ensure an elderly relative was fed and medicated." Brian opened his hands again, palms up. "It's family." "It is," the judge said, "which is why you make a plan and stick to it, or you pay the person who did." He turned to the clerk. "Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $480, plus the $75 filing fee." I felt the breath leave me in a way that didn't hurt. Judge Henry kept going. Now, about the future. Ms. Young proposes alternating evenings. Mr. Young, are you willing to stipulate on the record to continue that schedule, and, if you miss a turn, reimburse half of any caregiver costs within 7 days? That will reduce the need for further litigation. Brian stared at the table, then flicked his eyes to me, then to the clerk like he was looking for an exit. His voice lost its shine. What does stipulate even mean? It means you agree, the judge said. I can note it as part of the judgment. If you don't comply, Ms. Young can return to enforce. I didn't talk. I let the silence sit. Brian exhaled through his nose. Fine, he said. I'll agree. Ms. Young? The judge asked. Yes, I said. The clerk wrote quickly, reading back the terms. Alternating Saturday, Sunday evening caregiver duties. If the scheduled person misses, any reasonable replacement costs are split evenly. Reimbursement paid within 7 days of the missed date. We both nodded. The judge signed. He slid the stack back toward me. Ms. Young, leave copies with the court. Mr. Young, you will receive the judgment by mail. Payment is due promptly. If you fail to pay, she can pursue collection remedies. Brian's jaw worked like chewing air. He didn't say anything. The blush on his neck had climbed high enough to color his ears. Anything else? Judge Henry asked. No, I said. Brian smirked at nothing. No. Good luck to your grandmother, the judge said, and that was the part that made me want to cry, because it was the only piece that mattered, and he'd put it in the center without making a speech. Outside, the hallway felt colder. Brian hovered like he wanted to perform indignation for the clerk, but couldn't find an audience. You happy? He said, low. I'm relieved, I said. I'll email you the invoice per order, due in 7 days. He rolled his eyes and walked off. The smell of his cologne trailed behind him and thinned out into the bigger scent of floor cleaner. I sat on a bench, took a photo of the stamped judgment for my folder, and texted Freya. Done. He has 7 days. Thank you for sitting with her this morning. Freya sent back a confetti emoji and a heart, and said Grandma beat her at gin rummy. In the car, I drafted an email with the subject line, Per court order, reimbursement due. I attached the spreadsheet and a PDF invoice that matched the judgment, $480 plus $75 filing fee. I added the new line at the bottom, future missed turns trigger 50 of 50 split with reimbursement due within 7 days per stipulation on today's date. Then I sent it, copied myself, and texted Brian, short and neutral. Invoice attached per order. I didn't gloat. I drove to the yellow house with the blue lanyard warm against my chest, stopped in the kitchen, and checked the pillbox out of reflex even though it wasn't my night. The little squares clicked under my fingers. Then I locked up, texted Haley a quick, we won, and went home to a quiet that, for once, didn't have teeth. I stopped at the hardware store on my way to Grandma's and bought a realtor-style lockbox, the kind with a little dial face and a clamshell for a key. $29 and a small screwdriver later, I had it clipped to the inside rail of her porch. I put the spare house key in, spun the code, and locked the front door for the first time in a long time. The screen door still creaked. The porch still smelled like dust and old geraniums. I wrote the code on a sticky note for Grandma and tucked it in her recipe box in case she forgot. I don't like all this security, she said, standing in the doorway watching me. It's just so only the people who are supposed to be here get in, I said. Freya has the code. I have the code. Brian will have the code when he needs it. She nodded and fussed with the door frame. If you say so. At home, I built a new calendar and shared it again. Saturdays, Brian, dinner by 7, meds at 8. Sundays, Natasha, same notes. I added a line to each event description. if missed, 50-50 split on replacement costs due within 7 days per court order. I dropped a link to a payment request template under it, so neither of us had to guess. I texted Brahmin the same way I'd text any coworker after a schedule change. Per court order, here's the calendar invite. Please accept. Lockbox on Grandma's porch. Code on request. Reimbursement due by Friday. No pay, no key. He came back fast. Seriously? You changed her door? This is Grandma's house, not a fortress. I forwarded the PDF of the judgment and the invoice from yesterday. Due Friday, I wrote. Then, code once payment is received. 3 dots blinked, stopped. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. $550 with the note per order. I sent him the 4-digit code and the tiny lockbox pictogram just to leave nothing to I didn't know. I paid Freya for court morning anyway, $60 in an envelope with a thank you card, even though she had waved me off. Take it, I said. That one wasn't on Brian, it was on me. She tucked it in her pocket and pretended not to get misty. Saturday came and he tried one more angle at noon. Can we swap tonight? I've got plans. I replied with a screenshot of the calendar and, it's your Saturday. Swap needs 24 hours notice and agreement. No agreement today. He didn't answer. At 6:12, the calendar chimed on both our phones. At 6:40, I texted, you set for dinner? He sent back, on my way, no emojis, no shine. I had a closing shift. I did the deposit and the count with my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Haley passed me in the aisle around 8, saw my face and mouthed, well? I checked my phone. A photo from Brian. Grocery store rotisserie chicken on Grandma's counter. Microwavable mashed potatoes, green beans in a plastic tub. The timestamp was 7:03. He'd taken the photo like proof, the way I take them. No caption. Just the picture, and, 20 minutes later, another text. Meds done at 8:05. I saved both to the Grandma folder and didn't respond beyond a simple thanks. Sunday, I went over with my own groceries and made soup because she still likes mine best. I set up the pill box, watched the 7:30 show with the antiques, and didn't feel that itch behind my eyes that I usually do. When I left, I spun the lockbox dial twice out of habit and felt the porch settle around me. The code stayed the same. Monday afternoon, Brian sent another payment, $30 with a note. My half for Freya, if you needed her this week. It was oddly formal, like he was wearing a borrowed suit. I replied, not needed. If that changes, I'll invoice per event. He sent back a thumbs up and nothing else. The next Saturday, he was 10 minutes early. I happened to be there dropping off prescriptions. He stood on the porch with a paper bag that smelled like hot chicken and soap, looking smaller than his cologne. He nodded at the lockbox. You really went there? I did, I said. It's easier to track. He glanced past me into the living room. She okay? She's okay. He didn't swagger in. He wiped his shoes on the mat without me saying anything, set the food on the counter, and asked Grandma if she wanted the legs or the breast. She smiled at him like she always has. I stood in the kitchen doorway long enough to see him fill a glass with water and set the pill box next to the plate. You can go, he said without looking at me, a little gruff. I got it. I know, I said, and I did. I went to my shift and didn't check the clock every 9 minutes. At 8:09, my phone buzzed with a photo of the pill box. Saturday p.m. flipped shut. The date written on a Post-it. No caption. There wasn't a miracle. He didn't turn into a different person overnight. He still posted a Sunday morning story with a coffee and a sleepy face. But he was on time the next week. The plan lived on the calendar instead of only in my head. When he asked for a swap on a Friday for a Saturday, I said no and didn't feel like a villain. When I needed to cover a Sunday because of inventory, I asked him on Wednesday and attached a $30 request for his half of Freya if he couldn't. He accepted. He showed up. And when he didn't, which happened once, he paid within a day without poking at old wounds. At work, Haley unclenched for me. "You look 10 pounds lighter," she said, adjusting a display of apples. "Those your new flats?" I looked down at the still glued pair and laughed. "Not yet," I said. "But soon. Grandma still tells me, 'He's a good boy, just busy,' and I let her have that. I don't argue with anyone anymore. I send the calendar invite. I send the invoice. I lock the door and go to work. The blue lanyard hangs on the hook by my door, not a leash but a tool. One night after dishes, I sat in her quiet house and realized the quiet didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like she was napping, like the TV could go on when she woke, like the world would keep its shape if I looked away. I checked the pillbox one last time, turned out the kitchen light, and left the porch light on low. I'm not the default daughter anymore. I'm a daughter with boundaries, and they hold.